When you invest, it's critical to keep your fees as low as possible. The reason why is that fees compound over time, just like interest. So to find out what fees you pay and how to keep them low, let's look at that in a bit more detail. This is not a recommendation. If you want advice tailored to your specific circumstances, seek independent financial advice. Whenever there's money to be had, you can ensure that there'll be lots of snouts in the trough, and your investments are no different. You'll end up paying fees for many different things. And the fees we'll be looking at in this video include financial advice, entry fees, exit fees, fund fees, and platform fees. Now, fees come in two flavors, percentage and flat fees. So let's find out what that means. Here's the presenter of the Money Box program on Radio 4 and also National Financial Treasurer Paul Lewis, for whom I have a bit of a soft spot. In an article in Money Marketing in 2017, Paul Lewis questioned whether the percentage charge model is really appropriate. And he gives the example of estate agents, and he asks a very salient question. Do the estate agents do 4 times more work to sell a £1 million house compared to the work they do for a 250k flat? The answer is, of course, no. And he extends this argument to the 1% charge on investments. It creates a continual drip, drip, drip out of the client's investment pot, which destroys clients' wealth over time. To see why, consider what the fees would be over time. Initially, the payments would be quite small, but as your investments grow, so do the size of the fees that you pay. If that's the way your charges grow, the question you have to ask yourself is, does the service provider provide more value every year forever? Because that's the assumption. Do you really get a more valuable service as your investment grows? If not, then perhaps a fixed fee would be better. Even though that might cost more initially, as your investments grow, a fixed fee model might be significantly cheaper. For example, let's imagine that we have a 5% return on our investments over the long term. Perhaps we'll pay 2% to our fund manager, and here I've given the example of Schroders, but there are many funds which charge 2%. Your platform might charge you 0.45%, and I've used the example of Hargreaves Lansdown, which is one of the more expensive platforms. Now we're left with just 2.55% of our return. And if we pay 1% for financial advice, we're left with just 1.55% return. So let's say we invest £100,000 and we do that for 40 years at that 5% return. Our £100,000 will generate a total gain of about £604,000. But 86% of that gain, about 520k, would be lost in fees. And you would only keep 85k, which is 14% of the total gain. So even though it sounds like you're only paying 1% here and there, you must keep that under control because it'll make a huge difference to your outcome over the very long term. And as an example of best practice, Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust has been cutting its fee as it scales up its assets under management because they have economies of scale which they can pass on to their customers. Now let's look at an example where we're paying low fees. Now the example I've used is from my own Vanguard account, and in case you're tempted to ask, no, I don't work for Vanguard. I just talk about them because their fees are very reasonable. And the example I'll use is for this Life Strategy 40% fund. When I first bought the fund in September 2018, I might have had to pay a transaction cost. But because Vanguard doesn't charge a trading fee, I paid nothing. Another place where Vanguard is very reasonable is its platform fee, because once you buy investments, they have to be held on the platform. Think of it like a digital safety deposit box for your investments. These are the payments that I've made to Vanguard every quarter, and you can see that they increase over time. When my investment was only about £13,000, the quarterly fee was £5. But as I put more money into the account, that fee increased up to £20. And the fee on Vanguard's platform is 0.15% of the amount you invest, until you reach 250k, at which point the fee is capped at £375. And Vanguard's very open and transparent about their pricing, and very proud of the fact they don't charge for many services. There's no charge for switching Vanguard funds. There's no exit fee, so if I leave my Vanguard account, I won't be punished financially. There's no entry fee when you first create your account, And if I close my account, they don't hit me with a fee on the way out. You also pay fees for financial advice. But as you can probably tell from this series of investment videos, I've gone for the do-it-yourself option. And that means that I pay nothing for financial advice. And I think that's part of a larger principle, which is that the more you know, the less you pay. We also pay fund managers to manage our funds. On Vanguard's platform, the fees range from 0.06% to 0.8%, and that's for the actively managed funds, which are more expensive. On most platforms, they'll talk about the ongoing charges figure, or OCF. But in addition to that, there are also hidden costs, which are called fund transaction costs. Any fund has to buy and sell assets all the time, and that's true of cheap passive funds as well as active funds. As markets move and the price of assets changes, in order to keep in line with an index, the fund manager has to buy and sell stocks and bonds. If we look at that life strategy fund, and we look at the transaction cost, you'll see that it adds up to about 0.12% per year. But that's a kind of invisible fee. It'll just be a drag on your return that you never see. And if I add up my costs, I've got a fund fee of 0.22% for this life strategy fund, which is the ongoing charges figure. There's an invisible fund transaction fee of 0.12%, and that's incurred by Vanguard as they buy and sell assets within my life strategy fund. Vanguard charges me a platform fee of 0.15%, and I've gone for the DIY option, so I've paid nothing for advice. So my all-in cost is 0.49% per year. Let's see how that compares with other platforms and other assets. Now, I haven't taken financial advice, but that's not to say that it's not a good idea. If you have a complex tax situation, or perhaps your investments are split across different countries, then a one-off financial advice session might be very sensible. But just be aware that if you're being charged 1% per year, that your advisor is able to justify charging you every year forever. And consider whether one-off advice for a fixed fee for a fixed amount of time might not be a better option. But if you go to Unbiased's website, that's unbiased.co.uk, you'll get an idea of how much you'll have to pay for each of the different services they provide. Yodelar does a regular review of St James's Place, which is a company that manages the money of about 600,000 people in the UK. And it's always surprising that given the very high fees that St James's Place charge, they claim their customers are very happy with their services. That's despite the fact that many of the funds underperformed the market. But if you do decide to leave St James's Place, you'll pay a very hefty exit fee if you buy one of their pension products. It starts at 6% exit fee in year 1, falling to 0 after 6 years. And their ongoing charge is around 1.85%. Plus, they'll charge you a very high initial charge of up to 5%. But you'll see they're not alone in charging a very high initial fee and a high ongoing fee. Even the government's auto-enrollment platform called Nest has fairly steep fees. Although the ongoing charge is just 0.3% per year, you have to pay 1.8% entry fee in order to put your money into the fund. And if you want to shop around to find the right investment platform, here's a plug for one of my courses called Finding the Right Investment Platform. Here I compare several different platforms to show you what you get and how much you'll pay for it, but also how to move between ISA platforms if you're not happy with the one you've got. So it really pays to shop around and find cheap fees for your investments, because it could make the difference between a comfortable retirement and a retirement where you're really struggling. I hope you found that video useful. If you did, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It costs just $5 a month, and then you can take part in our live Q&A sessions, but also talk to me or any of the other pension crafters on Slack anytime you like. If you support us at the $10 a month level, like Liam, Kate, Robert or Ian, then you can have bespoke analysis of your portfolio. And if you go for the $15 a month option, like Vivek, Lewis, Craig, Andrew and Kishore, you get a one-to-one power hour with me every month where we can discuss anything you like. But remember, it's not financial advice, it's only financial education that I offer. And as always, thank you for listening.